to Down and Dirty. I'm Larry, and today we're going to work on making a rear skid for the 21 JLUR diesel. This diesel has a depth tank in the back, and originally had a muffler in the back, but I deleted the muffler already, so still need to guard that depth tank. It has a little, somewhat of a shield on it, I guess we call it from the factory, but we're going to make one on a 3/16 plate, just like we made the front bumper and the front skid. So, all right, well, let's get started. All right, so I'm cutting well into making this skid. Didn't get anything recorded up to this point. But basically I just took a 1-inch piece on the back, cut a 4 1/4 inch piece because that bracket for the depth tank is angled down. And then I cut another 7-inch piece to go under the depth tank there. And now I'm going to cut one that's 4 3/4 that will angle up towards the exhaust, towards the, I guess be the front opening part of the exhaust. And then we'll have a piece that goes pretty much straight up, maybe slightly angled up towards the frame, under the hitch. So that will leave the exhaust open to the outside of the skid plate. So basically it's just cutting, fitting, measuring, as built. Take it as you go. This is 35.5 inches wide. So that way I can put side plate up that will clear the side of this depth tank mount. And then I'll just make the other side the same. And basically the design of it, you can put the factory muffler back in if you wanted to, because the factory muffler outlets out the side of the vehicle. Okay, we're cutting all 3/16 plate. Cutting all the 3/16 plate for this depth skid with a plasma cutter. That's it. All right, so we're getting there on the skid. Got my back angle piece cut, tacked on. All I gotta do is make the piece that goes up to the frame yet. We'll have the brackets to attach it to the frame because we're bolting it to the cross member that holds the depth tank in. Here's the driver's side where the depth tank is. Get shot down through here. You can see I'm going to make a side plate here that's going to go, it's got about 1/4 inch clearance for this here plate for the depth. It's basically it's going to come off just under this bracket, angle up a little bit, and then angle up and tie in to support it. All right, these 3 holes on the passenger side of the bracket for the depth tank and what was the factory muffler that I have already removed. So since factory muffler wasn't there, those studs weren't up in those holes. So let's use a transfer punch and punch those, mark those holes with a transfer punch through the open holes. I'll show you here in a minute. This one is where the depth tank this one is a stud for the depth tank. And over here, get this, See that mark right there, that punch mark? That's the other stud for the depth tank that I still have to drill out. I did the first one this same way, and I've done this before. So I already punched that one the same way and drilled it out so I could put my bolt in it. So here's this bracket. And you can see I've got threaded standoffs in there. I've got an Allen bolt on the opposite side. Those were my through holes where the muffler was, which I removed. If you don't remove your muffler, you'd have to do this to all of them. So this one here is on the stud for the skid for the depth tank. There's studs that stick down through this brace. And the muffler was the same way. It was studs sticking down that had nuts on them. So this is what I do. I took a bolt, cut it off, put it in my drill, used my die grinder, ran the drill with die grinder running on it, and sharpened it to a point. And I threaded it into the standoff. I did the same with the other one back here. And I put the plate up, bolted up tight, and then smack it with a hammer. And it makes a punch mark. Right exactly where you need it. So there's no guesswork as to where that's at or where that hole needs to be. Here's the threaded connectors that I bought. A local bolt store here called Carson Bolt. Had these in stock. They're an 8mm thread by 24mm long, basically 1 inch long. So I bought 5 of these. Actually, I bought a couple extras. I wanted something longer because it's almost not quite 1.5 inches in there. So I actually wanted something longer so they would stick down farther, but this was the best I could get locally. And then I went out and bought button head bolts. You want button heads under your skid plate because it won't catch as bad as what a hex head bolt would catch on rocks or whatever. So that's why I use button heads. So what I did on the stud is also just bought some regular 8mm nuts because I'd already measured all this because I had this plate up here the other day as I started making it. So I thread the nut on the stud first and tighten it up against the depth tank, and then screw on this threaded connector standoff. So that made it reach almost all the way down to the bottom, or close enough. So I had plenty of threads to thread my button heads in. Now where I removed the muffler, I've got button heads on top with a nut, and then this threaded on, and then a button head up through this into that cross member. So it's about the only thing you can do if you don't remove the muffler, and you definitely have the depth tank to deal with anyway, is this is the best way to do it, to use what's already up there. So this is what I made up to get punch marks from these studs that for the depth tank. You have to do the same again if you still have your muffler in place. So I took one of my threaded connectors, I cut off a bolt. Like I said, I put that cut off bolt in the drill, used die grinder and sharpened it to a point, and then I put a nut on there to lock nut it, jam it, so it would be tight and it couldn't move. And then just threaded that up in there to where it was just sticking down just enough to make a punch mark. And I'm working on getting the rear tabs for the skid or bolted to the frame. And this is an existing hex punched in the frame from the factory. And you can buy these nut inserts that go into those. I'll buy them directly from Jeep. Okay, the best way to do these is with a bolt, a nut, and a washer. I've seen people use a bolt directly into this nut to collapse it, to crimp it into the hole. Problem is, you may end up damaging your threads in your nut. So what I use is a nut on my bolt, and I'm going to use 2 wrenches, and I'll turn this nut on the bolt. So if I damage any threads, it's going to be on the bolt and not in this nut, because you thread your bolt all the way into your nut, but you're not turning inside of the nut. It's the way I prefer to do it anyway. I know people will just shove a bolt up in there and run it up into, because this part of the nut collapses down and crimps to the inside of the hole. But you may end up damaging your threads. So now, if you saw my video on the front skid, I did the same thing up front. Because these things come from the factory,
with nuts already in for certain options. Like I didn't order the steel bumpers for my Rubicon, or they would have been up front where I needed them. This one, I'm not really sure what it was for. It may have been the steel rear bumper, which I didn't buy as well. So that's all you do. You just hold your bolt with a wrench, and with another wrench, turn this nut on the bolt. And as you do that, it collapses this nut insert. To where it crimps itself into the frame. And you do that for a very long time until it bottoms out and you can't turn it anymore. So I'm going to move the camera so I can get in here better and get this tightened up. But see, right now it's already started crimping itself. So it will no longer come out of the hole. Insert part number. Okay, it's fully seated. You turn this till you can't turn it anymore. And it's hard to do, especially in this position here. But then you just loosen this back up and take it out. And you've got a threaded insert in the frame. It's that simple. So got all the mounting tabs, everything is welded on now. I put gussets on here because this is past the bumper and I'm afraid of it getting pushed up and bent. So I put gussets on each one of them. The middle one and def tank side. So let's made these brackets. I cut out this cardboard template for my ends. We still have to cut the ends and get them bolted on. So I'm dropping this back off of the Jeep now. So we're taking this back down. I'm going to do some clearance cutting around the tailpipe there yet. And I got to cut the ends and get them welded on. And get everything welded up. It's got the end pieces cut for the skid. Tack welded into place. Everything's looking good. Actually ended up a little closer to the def tank bracket than what I thought I was measuring, but we still have a gap. So I'm gonna get this all welded up. Doing a lot of stitch welding. Basically you weld an inch or so in a spot and move to another spot. So I'm just working my way around. It's gonna be a long day. It takes a while. But you don't want to get one area too hot. You'll end up warping it, have fitment issues. So just gonna be hopping and skipping around here. Weld inch here, weld inch there.
keep moving around. Here it is, all welded up and ground, sanded down. Still got rough edges on top to clean up yet with the die grinder. Get all the sharp edges off with the die grinder. Mainly up here on these sides. Well, I hadn't cleaned anything up there yet. Still very rough. That ain't smoothed up yet, but as far as this goes, calling this done. Looks good. So basically I welded up like I was, stitch welding. Grind it down first, rough it off with my DeWalt electric grinder there. And then I finish it off with this Harbor Freight belt sander. Actually, that red belt's the one that came on it. It worked for a very long time on this steel. I was very impressed. And this thing, it's a variable speed, very nice. But I bought some blue belts while I was there. Because these here say that they're for steel, tile, anything else hard. So blue belts do seem to hold up longer and take material off a little faster, but it worked out really good. I like the belt sander. I bought it originally for getting my front bumper and lower skid edges all rounded off and straight, so it works out great. I'm actually thinking about making a mount for it to stand it upright and use it as like a bench type belt sander. Here's the skid, it's all done. Lucky enough to have a decent day out here so I can spray it outside, because this bed liner I use is really strong. Just spray it in the shop. It stinks really bad, but it works good. So it's all done, it's dry. We're gonna get it put on. So here we are, completed def tank skid plate. And I have the muffler delete, so my tailpipe goes straight out the back instead of out this side towards us, as the muffler would. Everything fit up very nice. After welding it all together and everything, all the bolts went in great. Very happy with it. Now from up under here you can see the button head bolts that we put in. Look up there, you can see my rock light that's temporarily zip tied on, because it goes in the rear drain under the jack, which is now covered by the skid plate. So I actually drilled a hole and also have a tapped hole there. I'm planning on bolting in a rock light that DCS makes that is actually under my radiator, rather than that drain plug one that I temporarily zip tied up there. So I'm gonna get another one from DCS that goes under the radiator that's on the front of my JL, and I'm gonna bolt it in from the inside of the skid, pointing down through the hole so it won't be exposed. All right, well that concludes this video. We finished up the def tank skid. I think it came out very well. I like how it fits, and 3/16 plate. So now we don't have to worry about damaging the def tank or the muffler if you still had a muffler in the back. But I just have straight pipe. We did a muffler delete on this, so it's pretty much tucked up in there. Really wasn't concerned about it anyway, but got some extra space beside the def tank now. I think I'm gonna put something in the back, and make another video on that, show you what my idea is. All right, thank you for watching. Like, subscribe, share, comment below. Let me know what you think. Thank you. Take care. Appreciate y'all.